1. Some background, without giving too many details in case one of my coworkers sees this. I've been working as the marketing director for a very small company for the past year or so. This job started out nice enough, but it quickly went downhill when we had about 10 of our 35 full-time staff members quit over the span of a few months. They all left for various reasons relating to the awful boss Stacy's poor management tactics and her team's attitude. The staffing issue became my issue when I was forced to pick up the slack for everyone who had left. I was being asked to do a number of miscellaneous tasks, some of which I was nowhere near qualified for, all of which took away from my time to do my actual job of marketing. Despite this, Stacy would consistently make a fuss over certain marketing objectives not being completed when she wanted. I would always explain to her that because she had delegated me to do specific work elsewhere, I had no time to do the marketing projects we had brainstormed. She, of course, never listened. As time went on, we lost 5 more staff members, including our secretary. I was moved to cover her position at the front desk full-time for 5 weeks, during which I couldn't get any of my actual job doing marketing done. All of my projects came to a standstill, and we even lost touch with one of our vendors who I had been working with. The minute I was able to return to my own office, Stacy and her team were hounding me for marketing materials that in their minds should have been done by now. But I explained to them that I essentially had a different job for the last 5 weeks. I wasn't allowed any time to work on them. I was beyond frustrated at this point and began looking for other jobs. About 2 weeks ago, I got an offer for a much better company and handed in my notice to Stacy. Stacy was flustered and asked me before I leave to finish a list of projects that she had kept putting off. Specifically, she wanted a project, Project A, that she had repeatedly pushed to the back burner since December to be done. I was the only one who could do this project and she knew it, and she desperately wanted it done before I left, since its completion meant she could put off hiring my replacement for a while. In our meeting, she told me specifically that Project A was the priority, and I was to do no other work until it was completed. Okay, cue malicious compliance. One of the other reasons why it would sometimes take so long to get certain marketing projects done is because they required Stacy and her team's input and approval. This was mostly for design-related projects. I would make an initial design, get their input on what looked good, change the design, and then wait for them to approve it before sending it to a printing or manufacturing company. All of this happened over email, and no matter how many reminders I would send, Stacy would always drag her feet in responding. It could sometimes take an entire week to do what should have taken maybe 3 hours. I mentioned this problem to Stacy before, and she again never listened. Well, guess what this final project she wanted me to complete was? A design project. And guess who spent the last week and a half dragging her feet to respond to my emails about it? Stacy. Now, I could have been working off the other items on the laundry list of work she wanted me to do while I waited for Project A's approval. However, since she explicitly told me Project A was the priority, not a single thing on her list got done. The best part is there's not enough time for me to fully complete Project A now either, since she took so long to respond. I will be handing off to her all the design files, most of which she can't even open since she doesn't have the right software, and then leaving on Tuesday. After that, not my problem. 2. This occurred while I was still in an apprenticeship at my current workplace, a few years ago. It was never really commented on by management, but was internal within my department. We have an electronic time-stamping system to log our work hours. When we arrive and start work, we stamp in, and when we leave, we stamp out. The logged time is then uploaded at the end of the month, and our monthly worked overtime is calculated. At the time, my daily habit was, if my shift started at 12:30, I'd leave home at 12, and I'd be at work roughly 12:15 or 12:20, depending on traffic. In really bad cases, it can be 12:25. Now, it's relevant to know that every hour there are timestamps in which 2 people have to be present at work at all times, from 12 to 12:15, 12:30 to 12:45, 1 to 1:15, and so on. So the employee could only leave his position when his replacement, in work clothes, was present and logged. That's why I was oftentimes quite early. If I arrived at, say, 12:20, I'd immediately log in, change into my work clothes, and while I did that, the colleague I replaced could change clothes and go home, since I'd be ready at 12:30 at least. Now, there was one colleague who did not like that, mainly because I'd collect overtime for that, even though other colleagues could take that time off their schedule. So he told me to be logged in precisely on time at 12:30, though he wanted me to already be in work clothes before logging in. Since we weren't allowed to wear our work clothes outside of work, including the work commute, he wanted me to be early at work, to change my clothes, to send a colleague off so they could change their clothes while still logged in, and leave for home, while myself only collecting the time my shift is. So I did pretty much that. I'd be at work at 12:25. If I was early, I'd sit in my car in the parking lot and wait. Then at 12:25 would go in, change my clothes, and stamp in, which could take more than 5 minutes to do. And because I wasn't early enough, my replacement could not leave early and would make overtime they didn't want. Of course, most colleagues didn't mind that. Nobody cares about staying 10 minutes longer. But a certain colleague did absolutely not like that. This entire thing then ended up backfiring on him when I didn't make enough work hours, since he also demanded I log out when I'm done with work early in the evenings. So with each week my time account would shrink and shrink. They'd give me work additional days, but they could not do that all the time because as an apprentice I wasn't allowed to work more than 5 days a week, which I already regularly did. They also could not let me work additional hours per day, because as an apprentice I wasn't legally allowed to work more than 8 hours per day either. So of course at some point the department management asked questions on why I'm constantly missing hours, on why the apprentice is working weekends too often, and why he is making 9 or 10-hour shifts. After a month he stopped complaining about me being early, and ever since then things have worked flawlessly, until Corona hit. 3. Many years ago, I was a kitchen manager for a very popular restaurant concept. My location was fairly busy, and there were a lot of office-related tasks, including placing food orders twice a week. Over the years, I developed a spreadsheet to make the ordering process faster, and ensure that when I was on vacation, proper food levels were maintained. After 6 years and multiple praises from higher-ups about efficiency, we got a new district manager. The person came in and was very by the book. Everything had to be done as per company policy, and we could not deviate. One day, the DM noticed that I was using my spreadsheet to calculate my food order for the week. I was told it was not company sanctioned and I could not use it. I explained that it saved me 2 hours each time, and I used that time to help others. That did not sit well with the DM, and I was told to stop using it immediately. The DM asked the general manager if I had any other shortcuts that were unauthorized. Because the GM wanted to stay on the DM's good side, they spilled the beans on all my non-compliant methods I used. Now I was no longer allowed to use any of the time-saving tools I created. Cue malicious compliance. As I was no longer allowed to use these tools, I emailed them to myself and added a password to lock them down on the work computer. No longer usable. But I added a bit of extra to the spreadsheet to make it self-destruct if someone attempted to hack the file. The self-destruct would delete the contents of the file along with the contents of my personal folder. Time to get a new job. I gave 6 weeks' notice and was greeted by the DM the next day. I was asked to turn in my keys and was promptly fired. 2 days later, it was order day. The GM called me and asked for the password to the spreadsheet I could not use. Since no one but me knew how to order without the spreadsheet, they were panicking. I promptly told the GM I was unable to help, and if they wanted the password, the DM would have to call me personally and ask. That never happened. I got multiple calls and texts from the GM, other managers, and even a DM from another district. They even called my wife. They tried to guess the password, and on the third try, even with a warning prompt, the program worked perfectly. All contents of my personal files were permanently deleted, and the spreadsheet deleted its contents and saved itself with no contents. Now there was nothing I could do. They were warned, multiple missed calls after that. I found out later that the GM had to spend 4 hours doing the food order and had to pay a late fee for ordering late. The DM was demoted 3 months later. I like to think it started with me, but I'm sure there were other factors. For those wondering, I do not have the file. It was 10 years ago, and it was nothing that cannot be found in the internet. Also, this was an Excel spreadsheet used to calculate weekly product usage and replenishment suggestions. It was not integrated into the company ordering system. I did not need it, it just saved me time from having to do the same calculations for 400 plus items. Each manager is taught how to place orders the company way. It is just I was the only one to do it for 6+ years. All of the historical information was intact and could have been used to assist, but they knew I had a simpler method and wanted to make it easy for themselves. Everyone is entitled to their opinions, and I appreciate the different views. What's done is done, and I regret nothing. Thank you. 4. So context. Me and my fiancée live in the USA, and had an opportunity in another state that required us to move pretty quick. Our lease required 60 days of notice before we move out, plus a buyout fee. But because of the situation, we weren't able to give 60 days of notice. We're also already not really happy with our landlord, because she called us 6 days before we moved into this unit, about 10 months before all this went down, and told us that she would have to delay our move-in by a week and move us to a completely different unit because the people in our unit decided last minute not to move out, despite being required to by the same lease we signed. Not that I want to kick these people out in their butts with no place to stay, but our landlord didn't really apologize to us. Instead, just emphasized how much of a tough situation these tenants put her in by remaining in our unit. In an emergency, we had to stay with my fiancé's family for that week before moving in. On top of that, she really hasn't been the best while we lived here. The only way the office will accept any kind of correspondence from residents is through their online portal. We're not allowed to email them directly, only call, and even then we can't place maintenance requests over the phone. And the online portal has been down a total of almost 90 days that we've lived there. Not 90 days in a row, but there was a 2-month period where it was down completely, and it was down sporadically throughout the rest of our stay. No alternative for the portal was ever provided. So here's the story. I sent our landlord an email letting her know that we needed to move out soon. I think the date was 45 days from when I sent the email. In the email, I included that we understood our financial obligation and that we intended to continue paying rent through the end of our lease, but we really aren't giving her 60 days notice before we move out. I wanted to give her the courtesy of being able to rent out the unit, or at least begin to look for other renters, and have them move in sooner so the unit remains occupied and they can rent it out sooner. Our landlord shoots back, insisting that we must give 60 days notice before moving out, and that we must pay the buyout fee to leave early. The buyout fee was about 3 months of rent, and we had 3 months left on the lease. So we would have to pay the 60 days of rent, and then the buyout fee on top of that. She stressed that we needed to read the lease before bothering her because all of this information was already in there. On top of that, she included several pages of the lease, including the page with the clause about needing to move out if another tenant has signed a lease for your unit. Cue malicious compliance. Maybe it was her including that clause that upset me, but I had enough at that point. I emailed her back and simply said, "Upon further review of our lease, we've decided to stay until the end of our lease on," and I gave the date. "As that date is more than 60 days away, I hope it is all right if you consider this our notice that we are moving out and do not plan on renewing our lease. Thank you." A couple weeks later, my fiancé and I packed our bags and moved out, leaving the unit empty. My aunt and uncle lived nearby, so we gave them the keys. They went to check on the unit and run the lights and the water about once a week to make sure everything was still working. Our landlord emailed us a couple times near the end of our lease, asking if we would be out of the unit so they could bring their new tenants in to tour the unit. Unfortunately for her, we were always busy, and the apartment was never clean, so she couldn't give them a tour of our unit. When our lease was up, I took a trip back to town to drop off the keys and do our final checkout. Overall, we saved several $1,000s that we would have had to pay in rent, and we cost her several $1,000s in revenue from not renting out her empty unit for 2 months. She was none the wiser. 5. This is a story about a job I just quit. We were moving to another office, so things were chaotic. Days were really hot, so when we discovered our new office didn't have any AC, we were crushed. We tried to work there anyway, but 2 members started getting dizzy and weak, so we called our boss. He was solving some problems on our previous location, but told us to go home and not come the next day, since he'd buy a new AC and install it then. We were happy with the free day off, and my boss went on his way to buy the equipment. This story is about what happened when he bought it. So this new office was somewhere fancy. Our boss was a tenant in this building, and there were doctors, lawyers, dentists, all kind of fancy people. Everyone wore suit and tie, and since most of the tenants were rich, the building's workers were super polite. Mostly because some tenants were rude to them, acted entitled, and tried to get them fired for petty reasons. Anyway, my boss called some of his friends and said, "Hey, would you help me install an AC in my new office? I'll pay you with some beers." And they accepted. Since it was, again, really hot, my boss and their friends went in the next morning wearing tank tops, shorts, and sandals. They were greeted by someone who worked there. I don't remember his name, but we'll call him Assistant. They knew who my boss was and would follow him around, answer his questions, help him with any info about the building or the room. You know, a good human being. He was supposed to know all the tenants, so everybody liked him. But I guess he wasn't in a leadership position because his workmates didn't enjoy his presence. He didn't seem to care, though. So Assistant greeted my boss and followed him to our new room. My boss said he saw the receptionist look at them with disgust because of their clothes, but didn't think much about it. What were they supposed to do? There was only one entrance. They went upstairs and started working. Eventually, my boss noticed he forgot some tool in his car. No prob. Assistant went with him, they got it, and came back. At the reception, again, Mr. Receptionist looked annoyed. My boss, who I admit wasn't the most organized, noticed he forgot to buy something. Okie dokie. Assistant, always happy to help, followed him to the entrance and waited for him to buy the tools somewhere near and come back. Again, as they got in, Receptionist looked pissed. For the 3rd time, my boss had to go through the reception to do something or get something he forgot. Assistant went with him, assuring him it was okay and he had every right to come and go as he pleased. But this time, Receptionist had enough. When my boss got into the building, he saw a Receptionist come in his direction, fuming. But he didn't say anything to my boss. Instead, he went straight to Assistant and, completely ignoring my boss, said something along the lines of, "What the hell is this? Why are those people coming and going like there's no order in this building? Why don't you do anything?" Assistant just looked at him and said calmly, "I'm sorry, but they need to make as many trips as possible to install their new AC today, so that tomorrow the team can work without any interruption or discomfort." "I don't care," said Receptionist. "Those people are annoying our staff, our guests, and our tenants. This building is no place for them. If you don't stop this mess right now, I'm going to call the tenant and tell him you're allowing such people in his new office." I think you can guess what happened next. According to my boss, Assistant's face lit up, and he smiled. "Oh really, please do. You can talk to the tenant right now if you'd like." And he turned to my boss, who just looked at him with an innocent, "Yes, how can I help you?" face. My boss said that Receptionist's face went white. He tried to say something, but couldn't pick the words, so he just left in a hurry. My boss and Assistant laughed a while about it and went back to the office. The AC got installed, and we worked the next day with ease. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge's Ice Cream. episode 140. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I'd appreciate it if you give the video a share around to any and all places you can think of. Alright, let's see. We have a birthday shout-out today, and today's birthday shout-out goes to Sean Dory. You may recognize Sean from popping in some of the live streams or in the comment section of various videos. A very happy birthday to you, Sean. I hope you're taking great care of yourself and having good times. Thankfully, your birthday falls in the middle of the week, so you get to celebrate right through to the Sunday, as is tradition here in the Hellfreezer community. All right. Now, I'm going to have a little sing-song, and we'll see what we can do about a question of the day. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sean Dory. Happy birthday to you. All right. Okay, right now, before we go, let's see. Hellfreezer's question of the day. Grass or paving in your home? If you have the choice between one or the other, always it's not financially possible. You've got to just put up with what the house is there. Maybe you're renting and you just can't change it. I have grass, but to be honest with you, if I owned the house and I had the money, it would be paved off because I hate cutting grass. So what do you think? Do you have a preference? Do you have a preference for a particular kind of paving? Or do you have plans for home improvements you'd like to make? Have a think and a thunk and leave a comment below. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.